His wife filed for divorce on the 5th day after his diagnosis. Cancer. "I'm not wasting my youth on a dying man," she said, and left. I drove my daughter to school myself, between chemo infusions. 3 years later, my ex showed up at our daughter's graduation on the arm of her new husband, stepping out of a crossover, smiling from ear to ear. But what my daughter did next? Well, pause for a moment. Welcome to everyone joining us for the first time, and a warm thank you to our regular listeners. Drop a comment and tell us where you're listening from and what the weather is like today. We always love reading your messages. Subscribe to the channel, and let's keep listening. David Miller walked out of the oncologist's office with a hospital bracelet on his wrist. He only noticed it on the city bus when he reached for the handrail. Malignant cancer of the lymphatic system. The doctor had talked for 40 minutes, drawing a chemotherapy schedule on the back of a prescription slip and listing the medications David would probably have to buy himself. Because waiting for insurance approvals could take longer than anyone had. David nodded and memorized the words, along with the crack on the ceiling that looked like a river on a school map. The kitchen light was on when he got home. Karen was sitting at the table. In front of her lay a thick cardboard folder with a law firm's logo on it. The coffee pot on the stove had boiled dry long ago. "You're really late tonight. I've been waiting," Karen said instead of hello, sliding the folder toward the edge of the table. "Take off your jacket and sit down. We need to talk seriously and calmly without any unnecessary emotions." "Yes," David said. "I have news too, and I'm afraid it isn't good." He sat down and put his hands on the table. "You see, here's the thing. They found cancer, Karen. It's official. A whole pile of paperwork and referrals." She did not flinch. Her face did not change. She only gave a short nod, as if he had confirmed something she already knew and had already added into her calculations. "I know. Or rather, I suspected something like that. That's why I went to see a lawyer today. You understand how much treatment costs in cases like this. It will drain every cent of our savings. Paid scans, expensive medications, endless trips to hospitals in Chicago. And your electrical contracting work will simply stop. There won't be any income. You can't climb into a high-voltage panel with an IV line in your arm. We both understand that perfectly." "No, personally, I don't understand that at all," he said. "Why are you burying me already? I plan to keep working. I'll manage somehow. I have jobs scheduled 2 months out. People are calling. Clients are waiting. Nobody's canceling anything. Clients are waiting for a healthy electrician who can show up and get the job done quickly, Dave. Not a sick man who's about to be poisoned around the clock with heavy chemotherapy in a week. Let's face the truth without illusions. I'm taking my documents and filing for divorce." "Wait, Karen. What truth are you talking about? We lived together for 20 years. 20 years. For God's sake, do you understand that? At least have the decency to listen to what the doctor told me. What the prognosis is. What the treatment plan is. What the chances are. I know all about those plans, and I'm not going to ruin what's left of my youth sitting by a bed, watching someone close to me slowly and painfully fade away," she interrupted. Her voice sounded like the voice of a person canceling a lease agreement. No anger, no regret, just item by item. David looked at her hands, neat and carefully manicured, folded one over the other as usual. For 20 years, he had fallen asleep beside this woman, fixed the curtain rod in their bedroom, taken her to Lake Michigan in the summer. And her first reaction to his diagnosis was a folder from a lawyer. That evening, he opened the banking app and scrolled through the transfer history, hoping for a mistake. But there was no mistake. 3 days earlier, their joint account had held around $42,000. Now it had a little more than $1,300. "Karen, come here for a minute, please," he called from the hallway, trying to keep his voice from breaking. "Explain to me where all the money from our joint account went." She appeared in the doorway with her arms crossed. "I took my legal half. That's all. I think I acted sensibly and responsibly. I did it now before your treatment started eating through the family budget. Some half, more than $40,000. That's your share? And the fact that I earned that money over years, crawling out of dirty, damp basements with a heavy hammer drill and a wrecked back for 12 years straight. That's just some minor household detail that doesn't count? I left you enough. It will definitely last for a while," she said, then turned toward the front door. A stair creaked. David looked up. Emily stood on the landing in sweatpants and his old hoodie, the sleeves hanging past her fingers. She was 15, but in that moment she looked 10, the same little girl who used to climb onto his lap during thunderstorms. "Mom, please, wait. Where are you going?" Emily began, and her voice broke on the word. "Dad is really sick. You heard everything yourself. Mom, please, wait. You can't just pack up and leave like this." Karen turned back in the doorway. "Understand something, Em. I am not obligated to break and destroy my own life because of someone else's misfortunes and illnesses," she told her daughter in the same flat, accounting office tone she had just used with her husband. Then she walked out without closing the door all the way. Emily slowly came downstairs, sat on the bottom step, and pulled her knees to her chin. David sat beside her heavily, like an old man, though he was only 47. "Daddy, you're going to get better. You absolutely are. You'll see," she said without raising her head. "I looked everything up online. It says that with this kind of lymphoma, remission, that's when the illness goes away completely, happens in more than 70% of cases. I swear, I Googled it while you were on your way home. Well, look at that. I have a fast assistant. You already managed to search every medical reference site." He could not stop a short, bitter smile. "Yeah, while you were riding home on the bus. I noticed this morning when you were getting ready. You put on a clean, nice shirt. You never, ever wear a clean shirt if you're just going to some electrical job." A few days later, Karen moved in with Ryan Collins. He pulled up to the house in a dark SUV while David was taking out the trash, tan and casual, in a light jacket hanging open, even though it was November. "Hey, buddy, listen to me for a couple minutes." Ryan got out and held out his hand. David did not shake it. "Don't hold a grudge about what happened with Karen and me. Let's not get caught up in hurt feelings and domestic drama, okay? The main thing is, don't drain your inner strength on negativity right now. I'm telling you this completely seriously. Our energy is the most valuable resource we have." I learned that from personal experience. As soon as I shifted my focus and started thinking only in the positive, my entire life turned 180 degrees. "Thank you so much for that priceless advice," David said. "I'll write it down in a little notebook today. We'll make room for it somewhere between my first chemo infusion and radiation, right under the heading, 'Best Motivation from a Great Sage.'" Ryan blinked and lost his footing for a second, but quickly pasted on his usual smile. "All right, old man, hang in there. Chin up. Everything's going to work out. It's all going to be great." "Oh, absolutely. Don't doubt it," David agreed. He turned and walked toward the garage, thinking that life really did have a dark sense of humor. Sending a motivational coach lover in an unzipped jacket to give a pep talk to a dying husband. Chemotherapy began 2 weeks later. The first infusion lasted several hours. David sat in the outpatient treatment room, flipping through a worn crossword magazine without reading it, mostly hiding his face behind it. Across from him, an elderly woman rubbed lotion into her husband's hands. They both stared out the window, and between them there was the kind of quiet bond that did not need words. The chair beside David stayed empty. When he came out, nauseated and weak-legged, Emily was standing by the entrance with 2 paper cups. "Here, Dad, this is plain black coffee. No sugar at all, just how you like it." She handed him the first one. "And who is the second cup for?" "The second one is my control sample. At first I bought one for each of us so we could drink them together. And then I looked at my phone and read that coffee can be bad during chemo and should be limited. So now I have a very complicated problem in my head. Do I take the hot cup away from my beloved father, or do I keep quiet and spend the rest of my life suffering because of that sin? That is indeed a very difficult choice for such a young person." He took the cup with fingers that did not quite bend right. "So I thought about it and decided to keep very quietly silent, but with a very stern expression. Look at me closely. Do you see my face? This is my face of strict and silent judgment." She stood in front of him in his oversized hoodie, her nose red from the cold, with 3 browser tabs open on her phone about the side effects of cyclophosphamide. David took a sip of scalding coffee to hide the fact that his eyes were stinging, and not from the November wind. After that, the months blurred into one long strip without clear borders. Pills in the morning, a whole handful he washed down with cold tea. Vomiting at night when he pressed his hand over his mouth so Emily would not hear, although of course she heard. In the morning, a glass of water stood on his nightstand, along with a cracker he had not asked for. Laundry forgotten in the washing machine for 2 days. Food burned on the stove. Jobs squeezed between treatment cycles, from which he came home gray and soaked with sweat. Emily did her homework at the kitchen table, the same table where the lawyer's folder had once lain. David would come in after another service call, collapse into a chair, and she would say without looking up from her notebook, "Okay, Dad, our kettle shut off 3 minutes ago, and I made you delicious chamomile tea. And even if you start acting difficult and say you don't want it, you'll still have to drink it, 'cause I already poured a whole mug and I hate dumping it back into the sink." "Em, when exactly did you manage to turn into my strict mother?" "On the exact day my actual mother decided that position didn't suit her anymore," she replied, not looking away from her quadratic equations. David said nothing, because there was nothing to say. She went to math competitions, kept her grades up, did not complain, and did not ask to go to her mother. Once a week, Karen called. The conversation lasted 2 or 3 minutes and ended the same way every time. Emily said, "Everything's fine," hung up, and went to make tea with the concentrated face of someone who believed the water temperature mattered more than anything else. By fall, David made a decision that cracked something inside him. In the garage stood an old Japanese cruiser. He and Emily had spent 3 years restoring it on weekends, talking through the half-open garage door and wiping their hands on the same old rag. "Daddy, please," said when she saw the sales listing on his phone. "Please don't sell our motorcycle. Let's not." "No, Em. Unfortunately, we do need to. You'll be applying to college soon. Advanced math tutoring, test prep, all those courses. It takes serious money, and we just don't have it right now. I can handle all my classes myself without paid tutors. I'm very smart, remember? You told me that all the time." "Of course I told you that, and I stand by every golden word. But even the smartest, quickest kids still need good teachers." She went quiet, biting her lip, and left the kitchen. The buyer appeared quickly. The money was enough for tutoring and extra classes. Karen paid child support for exactly 3 months, $250 at a time, then switched to being paid under the table and stopped completely. The child support office shrugged. No official income, nothing to garnish. The buyer came on a Saturday morning with a flatbed truck, rolled the motorcycle up the boards, tightened the straps, shook David's hand, and drove away in the ordinary, businesslike way people drive away after picking up an old washing machine. Not 3 years of someone else's life with his daughter. Emily stood at the window and watched their shared territory, smelling of oil and warm metal, disappear around the corner. David closed the garage door from the inside, sat on an overturned bucket, and stared for a long time at the oil stain on the concrete, the only thing left of their Japanese cruiser. He cried hard, choking, pressing a hand to his ribs, because after chemo, even sobbing hurt. That evening, he fell asleep on the couch without changing clothes. His body shut down in the middle of a thought, like a breaker burning out in a panel. Around midnight, Emily came downstairs, draped a blanket over him, and stood beside him, listening to his breathing. "I'm here, Dad. I'm not going anywhere," she said into the darkness. He did not hear her. But that night, he slept until morning for the first time. In months, without vomiting, without sweat-soaked sheets, without staring at the ceiling for 3 hours. Winter settled early over Rockford, and with it came the thing David feared more than another treatment cycle. He snapped at Emily. She stayed late after robotics club without calling or texting. Her phone had died. It was a simple explanation, but David had spent 2 hours pacing the kitchen, dialing her number, and listening to the mechanical voicemail greeting. The steroids he was taking alongside the main treatment turned ordinary worry into panic with a metallic taste in his mouth. When Emily opened the door, he shouted. Not words at first, just a raw yell in which everything mixed together. Terror at the thought of losing her, rage at his own helplessness, the chemical tremor from prednisone. Emily froze in the doorway with her backpack unzipped, seeing her parent without his familiar shell for the first time. "Dad, my phone died," she said quietly. She was not making excuses, only stating a fact. "I ran from the bus stop." David stopped short, sat at the kitchen table, and covered his face with his hands. The silence lasted a minute or two. He counted his own breaths, trying to bring his pulse back down. "I'm sorry," he said into his palms. "Em, forgive me, I lost it. It wasn't because of you. The medication just hit me." She came over and hugged him from behind, resting her chin on the top of his head. It was the gesture of a grown woman, not a 15-year-old girl. "I know, Dad. I Googled the side effects of prednisone. It says right there. Irritability, insomnia, and crazy hunger. So honestly, you got off easy. You could have eaten the entire fridge and gone next door to start a fight with the neighbors." He laughed into his hands, wet and pathetic, with a little sob caught inside it. She laughed too. It was the kind of laughter that heals nothing, but lets a person breathe. A year and a half later, the scan showed remission. The doctor said the word casually while flipping through the results. David thought that for a man in a white coat, it was just a line in a chart. For him, it was permission to live, issued on probation. "Well, congratulations," the oncologist said, setting the folder aside. "The response looks good. Follow up in 3 months, then in 6. Live calmly, and that's it." Just like that? Just like that. Live? Were you expecting an orchestra with trumpets? I have 11 more patients behind that door, Mr. Miller. But if you need it for morale, I can stand up and applaud. David walked out of the office, and Emily was waiting in the hallway, visibly older after that year and a half, holding the usual paper cup and a pastry box from the bakery. Well, she jumped up from the chair. Remission. I told you. Emily handed him the box with the expression of a person who had proved a scientific theory. The secret is proper pastry. A doctor is physically incapable of giving a bad prognosis to a man who is chewing an eclair. That's a basic law of nature. The ritual formed on its own. Before every scan, she appeared with coffee and something sweet. Once, before a particularly important follow-up, Emily arrived with a whole cake in a cardboard box tied with ribbon. David looked at the box, then at her. Is that a cake? Correct. Eyesight normal, attention intact. Already an excellent symptom. Why a whole cake? These are serious tests today, she said, with a stone face. That means the chewing process must last a long time, so the doctor simply won't have time to open his mouth for bad news. Pure strategy. When the oncologist saw the cake in his office, he raised his eyebrows and asked with interest, "Do I get a piece?" "Only in exchange for good results," Emily answered without blinking. The results were good. The three of them ate cake right there in the office, surrounded by scans and medical charts. The oncologist said that in 20 years of practice, it was the first time anyone had come to him with cake instead of tears. Later, David told his daughter with complete seriousness, "Maybe it really is the cake." After that, they did not risk changing the ritual. Remission, however, did not mean health. Numbness remained in his fingers. The nerve endings damaged by chemotherapy healed slowly. On a service call at a private house, David could not tighten the terminals. His fingers would not obey. The screwdriver slipped, and he crouched in the basement, waiting for it to pass. The homeowner came down and silently handed him hot tea in a metal mug. "Blood pressure acting up?" the man asked kindly. "No, just the model year catching up with me," David said, and wondered whether his age had finally become something he could blame. Karen existed in Emily's life as a dotted line. Expensive gifts without reason. Empty messages once a month. Phone calls that lasted just long enough to formally count as maternal involvement. On Emily's birthday, a designer bag arrived from Chicago with a card that said, "Proud of you, Emily Ann." Emily's middle name was Grace. She turned the card over, held it for a few seconds, and calmly dropped it into the trash. "Dad, Mom forgot my middle name. Should I cry, or am I allowed to laugh already?" "That's somewhere between genres, Em." "Fine. I choose comedy. It's easier on the nervous system." Ryan, meanwhile, became obsessed with winner mindset. He started a channel and filmed videos where he stood in front of expensive cars at a dealership and talked about wolf packs and the morning routines of millionaires. In one video, a security guard appeared in the background and gestured for him to move away from the showroom window. The comments tore Ryan apart within a day. Emily showed her father over dinner. They sat over the phone together, scrolling through the feed. "Dad, check out this comment. Bro, kill the engine. Security is already chasing you. Success is over." David laughed so hard his ribs hurt, those old chemo-sore ribs that still ached. Emily waited until he caught his breath, then added seriously, "See? At least he serves some purpose." Public service stand-up comedy. True. Comedians do it on purpose, and this is just natural talent. The college admissions results arrived on an ordinary weekday while a frozen pizza was heating in the kitchen. Emily, already 18, sat with her phone, refreshing the page, and suddenly went still, pressing her palm to her mouth. Dad, I got in. Engineering in Chicago. Full scholarship." She said it 3 times, each time in a different voice, from a whisper to almost a scream. Then she cried into his shoulder. David held her and thought about the months when he had not been sure he would live to see her high school graduation. That evening, after Emily went upstairs, He went to the garage, sat on the overturned bucket in the exact spot where their motorcycle had once stood, and stared for a long time at the phone screen with her results. He did not cry. He simply sat and breathed. A few days later, Karen called on video. For the first time in all those years, her face appeared on the screen, changed now, with a different hairstyle, lips slightly swollen from filler, and a bright manicure. In the background, Ryan chewed something while staring at his own phone. "Emily, sweetheart, this is amazing. I'm so happy for you." Karen's voice rang with the enthusiasm of a morning show host. "Listen, I have an idea. Let's finally become a normal family. I'll take care of Chicago completely. I'll rent you a nice apartment. I'll pay for everything." Ryan leaned into the frame, still chewing. "Yeah. Promising people should live beautifully. We need to celebrate this properly, somewhere nice." Emily smiled politely, said goodbye, and sat at the kitchen table for a long time, slowly spinning her phone across the surface. "Dad," she asked without raising her head, "can money fix what people broke?" David wanted to say yes. It would have been easier, kinder, more convenient for everyone. Instead, he said, "No. Money just works like anesthesia for someone else's conscience." Emily nodded, got up, and went to study. Graduation day began at sunrise. David sat in his car in the high school parking lot, smoothing his shirt with a travel iron plugged into the 12-volt adapter he had soldered together himself. His suit hung loose on him. The disease had taken more than 20 pounds that never came back. His face was sharper now, shadows settled under his eyes, but he had lived. He was here. He had arrived early because he knew Emily could not eat before emotional events. On the back seat waited coffee and pastries from their favorite bakery, for later, when everything loosened its grip. The auditorium filled with parents. David took a seat in the front row. Emily sat beside him, adjusting the dress she was not used to wearing, and whispered, "Dad, your collar is crooked. Fix it." He fixed it, and she gave him a quick, nervous, grown-up smile. About 20 minutes later, when the principal had already stepped up to the podium, the auditorium doors swung open. Karen stood in the aisle in a tight white dress and oversized sunglasses, even though they were indoors. Behind her came Ryan, holding a selfie stick in one hand, an enormous gift bag with a bow in the other, and a live stream running on his phone. Several heads turned. Karen walked down the aisle, taking off her sunglasses and spreading her arms theatrically in front of Emily. The hug lasted exactly long enough for Ryan to aim the camera. "Hey, everyone, we're live," he announced into the phone. "Look at this beautiful moment. My favorite stepdaughter is officially graduating into adult life today." Emily waved to the followers. Emily flinched at that word and pulled away from her mother. Karen turned to David, looked him up and down, and smiled. "Oh, Dave, hi. Listen, you look great for your condition, so lively, so fresh. I'm honestly surprised. Not exactly thrilled to see you, but yes, lively, like a stray dog after surgery." David said nothing more. Ryan held out his hand. "Come on, Dave. Good to see you. Listen, life is too short to waste it on old grudges and drama. Let's shake hands, man to man. I won't argue about life being short. You're absolutely right about that," David said, looking at the outstretched hand but not taking it. "I learned from personal experience that it turned out much shorter and more unpredictable than I once planned. So I definitely won't waste it on empty handshakes." Beside him, Emily choked on her coffee and covered her mouth. Ryan extended the selfie stick to full length and began filming the ceremony, blocking the view for 3 rows behind him. A woman in a sharp suit, the senior class advisor from another homeroom, approached him with a face that did not allow negotiation. "Sir, excuse me, but this is an official ceremony." Please put away your selfie stick and equipment. You're blocking the entire view for the people behind you. Yeah, literally just 1 second. I've got 3,000 people in the live stream. I'm broadcasting for my loyal audience. This is a historic moment, Ryan began explaining. I'm sure your loyal audience will be understanding enough to wait 5 minutes, she answered without changing expression. Our students are receiving their diplomas and their parents would like to see their faces, not your tripod. Several parents behind him applauded quietly. Ryan lowered the stick, but continued filming from under his chair. Karen shifted half a seat away from him. All evening, she constructed the image of a caring mother for the people around her. She praised Emily's ambition, which Emily had obviously inherited from her. She mentioned that Chicago was expensive, but some people knew how to think ahead. Every sentence was a tiny needle pointed toward David. After the ceremony, everyone poured out into the school courtyard. Ryan stood in the middle, spun a key fob around his finger, and announced, "All right, everybody, now for the best part. A minute of your attention, please. The promised surprise is here." By the fence stood a white crossover with a huge bow on the hood. Students reached for their phones. Karen put a hand on Emily's shoulder. "Em, look over there. You deserve a normal, beautiful life, not this endless, exhausting struggle to survive. A mother would never wish anything bad for you." Emily did not move. David involuntarily looked across 3 rows of cars at his own car, with a crack in the windshield and peeling paint on the fender. "Mom, why would you do this? This is too much, honestly," Emily said softly. "Oh, stop. Too much would be a helicopter. This is just a normal start. Only people who grew up used to settling for crumbs think otherwise," Ryan snorted. Karen leaned toward her daughter and spoke under her breath, but David stood close enough to hear every word. "Please, just don't even think of building your life in your father's image. Dave is a wonderful man, a saint. Nobody denies that, but he has absolutely no foresight or ambition. Look at his suit. I think he wore that to our wedding." Emily slowly turned her head toward her mother. Then she took the keys from Ryan's outstretched palm. For 1 second, David thought, she'll accept. And part of him, the part that remembered the cost of Chicago housing and his unreliable jobs, wanted her to accept. But he recognized the expression on his daughter's face. It was the same expression she had worn in 4th grade when a boy shoved a classmate, and Emily silently walked over and smacked him on the head. His daughter did not lose her temper often, but when she reached her limit, it was better not to stand nearby. "Excuse me, could I say a few words too?" "Just 1 minute of your attention," Emily asked, and the courtyard went quiet. She cleared her throat, holding the keys between 2 fingers as if they belonged to a stranger. "Mom, Ryan, thank you, of course, for such an expensive gift, but I can't accept it. You see, my father drove me in that old car over there." She nodded toward David's car. "To school, to every regional math competition, to endless doctors and scans." And it went on like that for years. In winter, we drove with the heater completely dead, wrapped in our coats, because there simply wasn't money in the house to fix it. At night, Dad would be throwing up after another round of chemotherapy, literally turning himself inside out, and at 7 in the morning, he would still get up, start that engine, and drive me to class. He could skip meals, skip sleep, turn down a good job if he knew he wouldn't have time. But he never missed a single school performance or concert of mine. "Emily, for God's sake, stop this circus. You're humiliating me and my family in front of everyone," Karen interrupted with a tight smile. "You know, Mom, if I'm honest, I've been ashamed of you for a very long time. A very long time. So there's nothing new here." The courtyard froze. Ryan held the camera, and his hand trembled slightly. "He sold his favorite motorcycle back then," Emily continued, her voice lower now, denser. "The old one we rebuilt together in the garage, bolt by bolt, for 3 whole years. He sold it just to hire the best tutors for my college applications. And in those same 3 years, you sent me one generic card where you somehow wrote the wrong middle name, and one dry $250 transfer with no words of support at all." David lowered his eyes. He had not known she remembered the motorcycle. He had been sure she had forgotten. "The crossover is great. No argument. It's beautiful," Emily said, turning toward the car. "But 3 years of your complete absence from my life can't be covered over or bought back with this. I am asking you to shut up right now." "Stop," Karen hissed. "Remember my missed birthdays? My panic attacks when I didn't understand what was happening? The hospitals, the scans, the Christmas and New Year's holidays when Dad and I sat alone in front of the TV with a bowl of potato salad, trying as hard as we could to pretend we were having a great time and didn't need anyone else." Ryan tried to break the tension with a fake laugh. "Come on, people, let's all calm down. It's just a car. At the end of the day, it's a great reason to be happy. Why turn nothing into a drama?" Emily slowly turned to him. "Exactly, Ryan. It's just a piece of metal, just a car. And that's what seems very strange and stupid, to hope it can easily replace years of real parenting." She placed the keys on the hood of the crossover. Ryan reached for them irritably, grabbed them, and the fob slipped out of his sweaty fingers, skidding under the car into the gap between the curb and a freshly watered school flower bed. He lunged after them, dropped to his knees in his expensive light-colored suit directly in the wet dirt, and tried to shove his arm through. His pants darkened instantly. The live stream kept going. One parent offered to help, but Ryan snapped that he could handle it himself, and in that moment he bumped the watering hose lying near the flower bed with his knee. The hose shot water straight into his face. A teenager in the crowd filmed it on his phone and whispered to his friend, "Look, look, success and wolf mentality in action. Pure gold. This has to go on TikTok." Several parents laughed out loud. Karen stood off to the side, crimson, then turned to David and hissed, "This is your doing. You turned her against me, didn't you? You sat there for years poisoning the child against me." He looked her in the eyes. For the first time in 3 years, there was no fear, no hurt, no desire to prove anything. "You're wrong, Karen. I did the opposite. For years, I tried as hard as I could to protect her from the bitter truth about who you really are. And at some point, I just got tired and stopped lying." She saw everything herself. Karen opened her mouth and found no answer. Emily came over to her father and took his hand, the way she had when she was little, and they were crossing the street. "Dad, let's leave, please. Let's go home." They walked toward his car with the cracked windshield, peeling paint, and an interior that smelled like mint, gum, and motor oil. Karen called after them. Neither of them turned around. The graduation video spread through local parent groups in 2 days. Ryan on his knees in the mud with a hose, spraying his face, became a local legend. A week later, a client opened the door to David and laughed. "Oh, hello. Wait a second. You're that legendary father of that wonderful girl with the crossover from the internet. Man, you really showed them. Let me shake your hand." Emily hated the attention, but David sensed relief in her, as if she had peeled off something heavy and wet that she had been carrying for years. Karen wrote several times, first with anger, then with excuses, then with, "I made mistakes, but I'm still your mother." Emily stared at the screen for a long time, put the phone face down on the table, and said, "Amazing person. Every time she writes about her past mistakes, she makes them sound so light. Like she just forgot to wish me a happy birthday on time. Not like she packed her things and deliberately abandoned her whole family at the worst moment of our lives. At the end of August, they loaded the car until it could not hold another thing and drove to Chicago. Somewhere past Belvedere, Emily admitted she had been taking students since spring, tutoring 7th graders in math, 4 regular ones, $25 a session. It's enough for food and little things. Don't worry, she said in the tone people use when they are closing a subject. On the road, Emily suddenly said, "Dad, listen, I have a request. If Mom starts showing up again, calling or writing, please don't try to cover for her or protect her anymore. At least not in front of me." I don't think I ever really protected her. Emily looked at him for a long time, and the look said, "Of course you did." Maybe she was right. The dorm was chaos, boxes, carts, freshmen, pretending they were not scared. When they finished unloading, they stood beside her bed, and neither of them knew how to end it. Emily hugged her father tightly for a long time, truly, not politely, and not for any camera. That evening, David returned to an empty house, turning off lights room by room, and began finding notes. Folded pieces of paper hidden in places he opened every day. On the inside of a mug, written in marker, "Don't forget breakfast." In the tool drawer, under the top tray, on a torn piece of cardboard, "Charge real money for service calls. Stop working for thank yous." Between the pill bottles in the medicine cabinet. "Take them on time." In the fall, the cracked windshield he had been driving with for more than a year began spreading farther. He took the car to a repair shop. The mechanic checked the paperwork and looked at him in surprise. "Sir, hold on. Why are you handing me your card? Everything here was paid in full before we even started." "What do you mean, paid?" "By whom? For what exactly?" "For everything. New windshield, full suspension overhaul, alignment, all of it. The customer paid the whole amount online and left this note in the system. Here, look." The mechanic turned the monitor toward him. In small print on the screen were the words, "Do everything perfectly. He won't spend a dime on himself unless someone forces him." David picked up the car. A new windshield, clean, without cloudy streaks, without the crack through which he had watched the road for 3 years. The suspension no longer rattled. He sat in the repair shop parking lot, holding the steering wheel with both hands. Then he lowered the sun visor, and a folded note fell into his lap. "Dad, for years you protected me from storms I didn't even know were there. Let me take care of you at least once. I love you, Emily." He cried right there in the auto shop parking lot, beside a hardware store and a food truck. He cried the way he had not cried since the day in the garage when they took the motorcycle away. Only that time it had been from grief. This time it was because all the invisible work, every morning, every swallowed wave of nausea, every job between infusions, had been seen. It had been valued by the one person he had done it all for. In the pocket of the winter jacket he would put on a month later, one last note was waiting for him. He did not know that yet. It said, "When it gets cold, remember I'm right there with you, just farther away." And in the glove compartment, under the registration papers, there was another one. "I love you more than you love your garage." And that's serious competition. If this story made you think about family, loyalty, and the quiet sacrifices people make when no one is watching, let me know in the comments what you would have done in Emily's place, or whether you've lived through something similar. Give this video a like if it touched you, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next story.